Greetings, dear people of God at Trinity. Thank you for joining me for this week's reflection. I am so excited about the first weekend in June. The 5th, the Saturday, we will be having a town hall, and our worship on Sunday, also at 10, will be focused on what Rob calls becoming more than bystanders. In the face of the needs in our community, how might Trinity respond, put our love into action? No matter whether you've been involved with our Sacred Ground sessions, whether you've ever been involved on a commission, outreach, or care and justice, or in supporting the work of the commission, know that you are invited. We need you there so that we can learn together collectively how God is calling us to meet needs in the community beyond our own, how we're being called to become more than bystanders. Do you remember that finger game? Here's the church, here's the steeple, open all the doors and see all the people. Years ago at Trinity, in a sermon, actually, I offered a new version. Here is the church. Here is the steeple. Open all the doors and send forth all the people. Send them forth. Send us forth to do justice, love mercy, walk humbly, to practice what has been preached, to live the way of the gospel. I want to read to you a quote from Richard Rohr. Accept my computer in just a second. Here it is. He writes, "Isn't it instructive that the spiritual formation of the original disciples happens with Jesus on the road? In effect, the disciples learn by doing. So can we. They grow into an understanding of this God of love, this God of compassion, this God who loves justice, this God who makes all things new by participating as active observers and agents of compassion, justice, and newness. And yes, necessarily, they pause with Jesus to reflect, ask questions, sometimes stupid ones, and pray. But the spiritual adventure described in the four Gospels does not happen in the sanctuary. It happens on the road, in the company of beggars, prostitutes, and lepers, in the company of those in need." There is a fascinating study offered several years ago by social psychologists who were attempting to understand why people help in some situations, but not in others, and why some people help, but others don't. They decided to study one allegedly charitable group, professionals, seminary students training to become priests. They took 67 seminary students and asked them to deliver an extemporaneous sermon based on the parable of the Good Samaritan, a Bible story, as you know, about helping strangers in need. The researchers then randomly assigned the students to one of two conditions. In the hurried condition, a research assistant concluded the sermon instructions with, "Ooh, you're running late. They were expecting you a few minutes ago. We'd better get moving." In the unhurried condition, the research assistant ended with the instructions, "You'll be going in a few minutes, but they're not quite ready for you, so you can head on over, but they will probably make you wait a little." Each student walked alone to the building where that student would deliver the sermon. On the way, that student encountered a victim slumped in a doorway with his eyes closed, coughing and moaning, clearly in distress. In fact, the victim, a man, was in a narrow alleyway so that the student actually had to walk over the victim to get to the building where the sermon was to be preached. From afar, the researchers watched. Would the seminary students stop to help the stranger in need? They found that only 10% of the seminary students in the hurried condition stopped to help the man. In comparison, 63% of the participants in the unhurried condition stopped. In other words, being in a hurry can lead even a seminary student with the Good Samaritan on their minds to ignore a person in distress. What might this story, this study mean for us as we enter into this weekend of asking ourselves how God is calling us to practice love and become more than bystanders in the world? I think first, perhaps we can consider a gift coming out of the pandemic. That for many of us, as we move into what we might say normal life, we might change our understanding of how many things we do in a day. We might change our understanding of rushing being a badge of honor, that times of quiet and contemplation, times of watchfulness, of being in the peace of wild things, we need to be more loving with our own families, with ourselves, and with our neighbors in need. Perhaps slowing down is what we're called to do after the pandemic. And the other is to recognize that we need to be together, not in an anxious, what are we going to decide quickly way, which is hard for those of us who have certain personality types, but to be together in an engaged, collaborative, active listening way. That's why we need you all to be there. I cannot be there because I need to be with my mother that weekend, whose health is declining. But I will hold you in my heart and pray that this time will be one of inspiration, of connection with one another, of sharing what it means to be church today, reaching out, going forth, and practicing love. Amen.